Well, joining us to give his take on all of those issues you've just discussed is the CEO of the world's largest bond fund. I'm talking about Mohamed El-Erian, a friend of our program of PIMCO. He's live from Newport Beach, California, where they're based. Mohamed, great to have you back on the program. And as I understand it, you actually think Obama put together a credible plan for jobs.
I do. My reaction was threefold. It's a very powerful speech. It's a promising speech, but it's incomplete. Powerful in that it finally recognizes the depth of America's unemployment crisis. Promising because it moves from a series of ad hoc measures to a more holistic approach, but incomplete. We have to wait for the fiscal component, and we have to see how the political machinery reacts. The hope is that this will be a catalyst. The risk is that Washington once again will make the best the enemy of the good.
I must say, though, other than Geithner, the guests that we've had on the program, the guests that we've heard all morning long, are very doubtful that something like this will pass Congress.
You know, it's a question. My hope is that there's enough there for both parties so that they can coalesce to the center. As I said, the risk is they may not, but this is the first time the administration really recognizes how deep our economic challenges are and tries to get ahead of them. So hopefully this is a building block, but the jury's still out.
Mohamed, do you agree with the Treasury Secretary that if indeed this plan passes, that we could in fact reduce the risk of this prolonged period of slow economic growth?
I think we reduce it but not eliminate it. I think the reason why, Betty, we're having slow growth is because there are so many structural impediments that have remained unaddressed until now. We have a debt overhang. We still have sectors of the economy that are over-levered. We have a housing market that's not functioning properly. We have a credit market that's not functioning properly. And we have major question marks about our medium-term public finances.
Right.
So we cannot remove all these headwinds immediately, but we can start making some progress.
Start making some progress. The problem is that the markets still feel like they're hearing, though, a lot of mixed messages or unclear messages from Washington. So let's say, Mohamed, that this jobs plan does run into problems. It starts to get picked apart, by both members of the party. Where do we go from here then in the markets? Where do we go from here in the economy then?
So, Betty, think of it in the following way. The markets are sitting in the back seat. In the front seat are the policymakers in the US and in Europe. That's a very uncomfortable position for markets to be in. Markets like to look at fundamentals, like to look at company, like to look at issues that they understand. The minute you put markets in the back seat and put policymakers behind the wheel, markets get very nervous. If policymakers disappoint once again, we will see an endogenous delevering of the market, and we will go lower. So a lot depends on the policymakers right now.
Well, talking about policymakers, what did you make of what you heard from Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke?
I think it was a repeat of what he said in Jackson Hole. I don't think he added very much to the debate. He clearly doesn't want to front-run the FOMC meeting on September 20th and 21st. He holds out the hope that they can do something. But remember what I told you earlier. It's not a question of whether the Fed is willing to do something. It is willing. Neither is it a question of is it able. It simply doesn't have effective policy instruments at this point. So the best it can do is build a bridge, just like the ECB is trying to build a bridge in Europe. But there's always the risk that this is a bridge to nowhere.
Right, the risk, and as we continue to see this economy weaken, that risk gets higher and higher. So, Mohamed, does this mean that the chances, though, you say Bernanke hopes that something will get done? Then, I mean, do you see the chance higher and higher that by September 20th we will see something from the Fed?
I suspect we will see something from the Fed. I suspect that there will be the so-called Operation Twist, which is an attempt to bring longer-term yields down. There may be something else, but ultimately, Betty, it's not going to be effective in generating growth, and it's not going to be effective in reducing unemployment. For that, you need the other agencies in Washington to get their act together.
You said before that right now policymakers are the ones in a driver's seat. Outside of what we heard from Obama last night, what is next that you're looking for to see whether or not we can, in fact, get this global economy back on track? What's next?
So first we need Europe to have its moment of truth, to recognize that the current course is not sustainable, that they need to opt for one of two options, either full fiscal union or a smaller and stronger Eurozone. Secondly, we need the US political elites to realize that the US needs the Sputnik moment, needs a recognition that if Washington doesn't come together, we're not only going to face years of low growth, we will end up in recession, and it's going to be very costly. And finally, we need China to contribute to the global adjustment by trusting its consumers and allowing the consumers not just to have the wallet to spend, but also the will. If all this comes together, we can look at a better global economy. But Betty, it's going to be really challenging.
Oh, really challenging. That's just to put it lightly, right, Mohamed? Thank you. Great to see you as always, Mohamed El-Erian, the co-CIO and CEO, of PIMCO.